Welcome to my review of Guardians of the Galaxy. I finally saw it. I wanted to see it when it came out, but I just didn't get around to it until now. And I have to. Great, great way to start a review with sneezing. I just want to say that I've been wanting to see it for a while because sorry, I'm using a tissue. I don't want you guys don't need to see me blowing my nose. Yeah, I've been wanting to see Guardians of the Galaxy for a while because I don't know. I like Marvel superhero movies, but the number one thing that I feel like they lack is the comedy. I mean, Iron Man's kind of funny. Iron Man's funny, but even it doesn't have much of a comedy focus. Why am I angling my head up like this when the camera is down here? I don't know, but I don't know why I feel like got limited breath, maybe it's something. Anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy. That's why I wanted to see Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, finally, a Marvel superhero movie that also focuses on comedy. And I mean, they're not even really superheroes when you think about it. It's all set in space, so it's not like they have any abnormal powers or anything. I mean, they do, but they don't. I don't know. It's weird, but anyway, it's funny. I'll admit that it wasn't quite as funny as I was thinking, as I thought it was going to be, but it was funny. It was definitely the best Marvel movie I've seen. Not the best movie I've seen, but the best Marvel movie. I thought it was better than Avengers and Iron Man and all that. And I know not everybody thought so. The plot is a bit cliche. I'm just gonna go out and say that right now. I'll talk about what isn't good about it first, so that I can get all that negativity out of the way. The plot is kind of cliche. It's the standard powerful item. Everyone wants to get it. Keep the powerful item away from the bad guys. Blah blah blah. It's typical stuff. Also, they spend a lot of basically the movie is like an origin story, which I don't know, having to introduce 5 different characters and team them up, it takes so long that the climax of the movie kind of feels rushed because they had already spent so much time on getting these characters together that they didn't have much time left to make a good climax while also keeping it short so it doesn't run on for 3 hours like Transformers 4, which I haven't seen, but I heard that's how long it is. But anyway, so that's the pacing is as a result is a little odd, but the characters and the world are really good, and I'm excited to see, because they've already confirmed a sequel. I'm excited to see where the sequel can go once it's not tied down by the fact that they have to introduce all these characters, what they can do with it. I've heard people calling it the new Star Wars. I actually kind of agree with that. I feel like it is kind of I had a similar experience viewing it. It just felt like I was a little kid again. Oh my god, this is awesome. I imagine people felt like when they saw Star Wars for the first time. I don't know. I wasn't alive when Star Wars first came out, but I feel like it was something similar. Just this epic space adventure. Granted, Guardians of the Galaxy is a bit more goofy and cheesy. It's cheesy. I'm just gonna come out and say that. Yeah, it's cheesy. Sometimes to the point of just be stupid, but when it's being cheesy, which isn't all the time, sometimes it goes serious. But when it's being cheesy, it knows it's being cheesy. It knows, the movie knows when it wants us to take it seriously and when it wants us to just kind of not. And it does that well. It balances tone. The movie starts out with the main character, Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. His mother dies of cancer. And it starts out really serious, like Man of Steel serious, all very, very sad. And then they cut to him exploring this planet, and one of the best parts of the movie, in my opinion, was he has this mixtape that he had because he was raised in the 80s, and right after his mom dies of cancer, he gets like abducted by these aliens, and so they cut to him 26 years later. It says in the movie, and he's like exploring this planet, and he turns on his mixtape, which is like his prized possession, because it's the one thing he still has from Earth, and his headphones, and he's like jamming out to like the cheesy 80s music, and it's just great. Like there aren't many movies that could go from being that serious with mothers dying of cancer to that like just fun and silly in like minutes. And that I think that first 5 minutes is actually a really good example of the way that the movie balances totally. It knows when to be serious and when to be silly, and it makes sure that the moviegoers also know when it's supposed to be taken seriously and when it's supposed to be silly, which is something that not a lot of movies master. So that's good. And now we'll go over the characters. There is Star-Lord, who's funny. He's played by Chris Pratt, who I think he's in that show called Parks and Recreation. I've never seen it, but my mom watches it. My sister watches it. It's kind of like The Office, I think. But yeah, he was good. I thought he was good. And very sarcastic and witty. Kind of like your average 80s kid, to be honest. Kind of like your average 20-something-year-old, to be honest. Although I think in the context of the movie, his character would have been more like early 30s, but whatever. Like your average 80s kid, pretty much. And what your average 80s kid is like today. Which, I don't know, it's funny. He's a funny character. I like in the beginning, he always tries to get people to call him Star-Lord, but nobody does. It's funny. And then there's Gamora, who is probably the least interesting character in the movie, to be honest, because she doesn't, she's the most serious one. She has there's the least joke. There aren't very many jokes in the movie that revolve around her, but I'm going to give some pretenses to she's basically, this will tie into the villains. I'm going to go into the villains now. There is Ronan. He's this like blue dude with ridiculous makeup. Like he's got like black makeup around his eyes that like goes down here. It's weird. I can't tell if he was supposed to be taken seriously or not. That's the one thing I can't tell, whether it was supposed to be taken seriously or silly, cuz he's such a serious character, but like at the same time he's kind of like goofy, you know who I could compare him to? Zant from The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. How he's like all menacing, but then in the end he kind of is like, turns out to be just sort of a wimpy goofball, like a little kid almost throwing a fit. It's kind of like that, but better done, I think. Like it's not like he suddenly becomes this wimpy kid. He's kind of like that through the whole movie. Kind of sort of pouty in a way. Like I think Thanos, the guy he's working for, calls him a pouty child at one point, and I could kind of see that. Like he was sort of just this. I don't know if he was supposed to be taken seriously or not. If he was supposed to be taken seriously, then they did a terrible job. But if the comedy but if that was intentional, that he was supposed to seem like a pouty child, then they did a great job with that. But anyway, he's working for Thanos, who the same guy who appeared in the very end of Avengers, so that could hint at a crossover between Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. But he's working for Thanos, and he's trying to get the Infinity Stone, which is the big important thing that everybody in the movie is trying to get. Thanos only really shows up for one scene, but his daughters, Nebula, who is played by Amy Pond from the actress who played Amy Pond in Doctor Who. If you don't watch Doctor Who, then just forget I said. It doesn't matter. But Yeah, she was good, although she didn't get much screen time. The villains in general didn't get much screen time. They were probably the weakest part of the movie, to be honest. The villains. I mean, they weren't bad, but they were definitely the weakest part. And Gamora is Thanos' other daughter, except for she's not actually his daughter. She's like adopted by him. Like he killed her family and like adopted her, but she's not allied to him. Basically, she's pretending. She pretends that she's allied with them and says, "Oh yeah, I'll go get the Infinity Stone for you, Ronan, and I'll go get the orb for you, Ronan." And then she goes out and you think she's allied with the bad guys because she like steals it from Peter Quill, but then you find out later. But then you find out after they get thrown in prison along with Groot, Rocket Raccoon, which I'll get into in a minute, that she's actually not. That she's not allied with Thanos, or that she's trying to stop them, and she's trying to give the orb to an outside dealer. So, but I won't go in too far into that. And they do end up, they break out of prison, which honestly I thought the prison segment was a very good part of the movie. It was just funny, but I would go into the details, but I don't want to like ruin all the funny jokes. But it's where the prison is where you get introduced to Drax the Destroyer, which is the gray guy with like the red stripes and tattoos and stuff, played by the Dave Bautista, who I think is a WWE wrestler, and he does a good job. Like his, I feel like his character, like Rocket and Rocket Raccoon and Groot are all sort of treated as comic relief, but because Rocket and Groot are steal so much more of the show. Like when they're in a scene, they kind of dominate the scene. So as a result, Drax the Destroyer kind of gets sidelined, and ends up being like sort of the least memorable character in the movie because everybody kind of forgets about him, like the audience. I found myself kind of but he was funny though. There was this whole joke that he doesn't understand metaphors, and he says everything so serious and literal. Like it goes beyond just a cheesy joke. Like every bit of his dialogue is just so serious and rooted around the idea that he doesn't get metaphors. That he's a funny character to listen to. But basically, his motivation for joining them is he wants to kill Ronan because Ronan killed his wife and daughter. Because Ronan's basically a terrorist. He's all like he wants to kill all the Xandarians or whatever, which are basically humans, but they're not because it's not set on Earth. They call Earthlings Terrans in this movie, like Terrans, like I guess terrestrial, like extraterrestrial, terrestrial Terrans. And oh yeah, and that leads me into another thing. There's this like sort of space cowboy group that like they were the ones who abducted Peter Quill because they were assigned to by someone who I'll save who they were assigned to take him for the spoiler section. I'll talk about stuff that has to do with spoilers later. And they're funny. Like I believe like what I'm losing my train of thought. This always happens because the reviews aren't scripted, but they're a good character. Basically, they spend the first half of the movie trying to get Peter because he like broke a deal with them, like he broke an agreement with them, and so they're like mad at him. And then once they capture him, he manages to persuade them to help him them to help him stop Thanos. And yeah, so they're good. I don't know. There's not much I can say about them. Honest, they're basically like space outlaws, space bandits kind of thing. Like in Western movies, there's like the the gang, the gang of like bandits that rob people. It's basically that. The movie's sort of the. I was I when they were on this spaceship of these space bandits and like negotiating with them, I thought of Firefly, which is like that TV show. I've only seen one episode because I don't want to watch them all because there's only 14 episodes because it got canceled. But like it's on Netflix. It's like this space western made by Joss Whedon, who I think also directed the Avengers. That's another tie into Marvel, but yeah, it did remind me of that because that show is basically a space western, and when those characters were involved, it felt very similar to that show. But like, anyway, I'm going off track here, but then there's Rocket Raccoon and Groot, who are really good character. Rocket Raccoon is funny, and they make a great tag team. And Groot, oh my God, Groot. Groot is the best character in the movie. I'm just gonna say that right now. I am Groot, and we are Groot. Just great. I'll go into that in my spoiler section, but what all you need to know is for if you haven't already seen the movie and don't want spoilers, which you shouldn't want spoilers because basically Groot can only say 3 words. I am Groot. And the fact that his character is like the funniest character in the movie, in my opinion, despite the fact that he can only say 3 words, I am Groot. Just amazing. Like, you'd think that would get old, but it never does. It never gets old. It's used just enough that it's funny. That it's always funny, no matter how, like, every time they do it, it got a laugh out of me. I am Groot. And towards the end, I was able to tell when it was coming, so I would like get all excited, like when he stands up or like whatever. Like there's one part where they're all agreeing to fight against Thanos, and they all stand up and say, "Yeah, we'll join you, Star-Lord." And Groot stands up, and they like give him a pause before he says it, and I'm like sitting there like on the edge of my seat, like he's gonna say it, and then he goes, "I am Groot," and I just laughed. And my friend Charles that I went to see the movie with, he was laughing at it too. Groot is just great, but and then there's also there's this collector character who's a really like strange sort of. He's basically a space poacher, like he has all these like captured species of like aliens. He also has this like astronaut dog, which I thought was funny. And they're all like put in these like these weird cages that have like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. You'd have to see it, but basically he's a space poacher, and he keeps these things alive and like these, and it's really weird because I'll go in more detail to him in the spoiler section, but he was an interesting character, and I wish he'd been included a bit more. So that, let me see, I've talked about, oh yeah, soundtrack. Cannot forget the soundtrack. The soundtrack was great because it's basically like the pretense is all the music is like stuff that is like cheesy 80s songs that Star-Lord had on his awesome like cassette tape because he at one point he endangers the entire group just so he can get the cassette tape back, because when he gets put in prison he like the one of the prison guards like steals his tape and is just listening to the music. and he tries to like get it back, but they like lock him away. So then when he's escaping, he like goes and finds that guy and like beats him up and gets the mixtape back. And like he takes the orb too, so that the rest of the crew can't leave, and he's like endangering their entire mission, and which was funny. But yeah, it's just all of the cheesiest 80s songs, and they use them at the funniest moments too. Like they use them when like something epic is happening. Like you know how there's the action movie cliche of like epic characters just walking away from explosions. There's like an explosion back there with like epic music in the background. Well, there's moments like that in this movie, except for that all the epic music is replaced with like cheesy 80s music, which is just great. Like there's one, like when they're breaking into the prison they play that one song that goes, "You like pina coladas?" Dance in the rain. I don't know what it's called, but like they play that song and it just contrasts with the what's going on so much that it's just hilarious. It's funny and just great. And that's an example of the movie being cheesy and knowing it's being cheesy. Like deliberately trying to be cheesy, and it does that very well, in my opinion. I don't know why I started pacing all of a sudden, but whatever. And it's just great. It's just all these cheesy '80s songs that they got. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. A Jackson 5 song. Uh, and this one song that, oh my god, always gets stuck in my head. It was in the commercials. If you seen the commercial, that hooked on a feeling. It always gets stuck in my head. It always got stuck in my head after I saw the commercials. And it's true to the movie too. They use it in the movie, and I got it stuck in my head after the movie. It's just so catchy. But yeah, it's great. If you liked the trailers, it's pretty much what the trailers are accurate to what the movie is. Although I'd argue the movie's even a bit funnier than what was in the trailer. It's not one of those movies where the trailers show all the jokes. There are jokes that aren't in the trailers. Lots of them. Because I have seen those movies before where, like, it's mostly, like, crappy kids' movies that I'm forced to watch because I have little siblings, but, like, there are a handful of funny jokes in the movies, but all of them are spoiled by in the movie, but all of them are spoiled by the trailer. This is not one of those movies. At all. I'm gonna sit down, because I don't want to pace around anymore. Alright, now I'm gonna go on to spoilers. I know I've been talking for 21 minutes, but there's more I want to go into. So if you don't want spoilers, just go ahead and click off now. Alright, I'm gonna talk about the movie now. So the first thing I'll go into is Groot. Groot is the best character in the movie. He says, "I am Groot," and like every time he says it, basically him and Rocket Raccoon are like buddies, and the way they all get thrown in prison is like they're just kind of hanging out in the big city of like Xandar, which by the way was a super cool city. I kind of wish they had done more with it, like shown it more, because a lot of the movie was just kind of set in like dark alleyways and stuff, but it was still cool. The sets were cool. The Collector lives on this like planet that's like there's no laws, but it's like this sort of space, like it's this giant head of like this giant like colossal beast that's like got like the city inside of it. It's really cool. But and basically, but that I'll talk about that in a minute. Rocket Raccoon and Groot see Peter Quill. They also see Stan Lee hitting on a lady, which is the Stan Lee cameo of the movie. But then they look and they see Peter Quill like chatting it up with, I think, the same lady, like after Stan Lee walked away. Although obviously he's not Stan Lee in the context of the movie, but you know. And they're like, and they've got like this radar thing that they're basically bounty hunters, I think, is what's going on. They don't really give a lot of pretext to who they are, but it's clear right from the get-go that like Groot is basically a little kid and Rocket is basically his big brother, and their relationship is like that, like a big brother little brother relationship. Like he's very protective of Groot. If anybody messes with Groot, he'll like get on their case. And it's funny though. It's funny that he's the big brother in this situation though, because Groot is like this gigantic tree man, and Rocket's like this small raccoon that like rides on his back shooting dudes, and they are just as awesome as they are portrayed in the trailer. There's a moment in the end of the movie where Groot saves them all by like wrapping himself up in the tree. I'm not really sure exactly how he saved them all, because I was just distracted by the awesomeness of it. And he says this line, like the Rocket's like, "Don't do this, because it's going to kill him." He's like, "Don't do this, Groot, don't do this." And Groot says, "We are Groot," which, that was perfect, because I was kind of sitting there like, he hasn't said I am Groot yet. Are they going to make him say I am Groot? Because that could ruin the serious tone that they're trying to portray now. But at the same time, if they don't have him say I am Groot, they'll be missing a joke chance. And I thought having him say we are Groot, something that he's never said before, and use the word we that he's never used, it's such a subtle difference, but it makes it both funny and heartwarmingly serious at the same time. It's like the perfect moment. I thought if there was any moment of that movie that was one of the best moments I've ever seen in cinema. I'm just gonna be honest. Like in all films ever. So, and that's what solidified Groot as the best character in the movie for me. That and like everything he said was funny because it was one of those things where like he always says 3 words, but like there's one character who can understand him, that's the Rocket, and they have like conversations, and I always think that's funny when it's funny because like they'll have like conversations. Rocket will be like blah blah blah, Groot, I can't believe you're doing this. He's like, I am Groot, and he says it with the tone that matches what he's trying to say. And then Rocket will respond like he said something. I can't think of any specific examples, but if you've ever seen a movie where like there's one character that nobody, including the audience, can understand, and then there's another character who understands what that character is trying to say, it's like that, but funnier because instead of just being completely silent or just making grunt noises, he says, I am Groot, and somehow Rocket understands what he's trying to say. And it was just hilarious, just great. And Drax not understanding metaphors is also great. Like in the beginning of the movie, it's revealed that he doesn't understand metaphors when Peter Quill does this, and he's like, why are you touching your finger to your throat? And then in the end of the movie, he like kills this dude, and he's like, finger to the throat means death, and then he like throws him against a wall, and then he turns to Star-Lord and is like, metaphor, and Star-Lord's like, sort of. Like, that was him trying to make a metaphor at the end of the movie, and I love how they tied that back in. There's a lot of great jokes like that, but I'm not going to spoil them all. Well, I mean, I could talk about each and every one of them, considering that if you're watching this segment, you've probably already seen the movie. So, anyway, they go to the Collector, which is on that face planet I mentioned earlier, and the Collector is a very interesting character. He kind of has this, like, slave girl, and it's weird because they introduce him, and there's, like, this purple girl with, like, a maid's dress that is, like, clearly he's, like, his slave, and she's, like, cleaning one of the, like, glass containers. He's like, do you even have elbows? She's like, yes. He's like, then use them, like, when cleaning. He's like, don't forget what happened to the last person who didn't do their job correctly. And she's like sitting there, and behind her, one of the like glass cases has another girl from her species just trapped inside of there, and it was very unsettling. I'm not sure how I felt about that moment. Like, was that supposed to be a dark humor joke or what? I don't know. This is a weird moment. But then it's weird because they come in there, and he reveals what's inside of the orb, which is like this infinity stone. Is basically item of immense power, blah blah blah. Not really. I mean, they give like a backstory as to what it is, but the backstory's not really important. Basically, it's just super powerful item that makes whoever has it powerful, but it also can kill them. Like, and so it's weird because like the scene is very interesting, and I would have liked to see how that scene would have gone, but they kind of rushed through it because like the slave girl, she like reaches for the infinity stone as they're like talking. She's like, I will not be your slave anymore, and she touches it, and like, but she dies. Like, did she not know that it was going to overpower her and kill her? I guess she didn't. And it like blows up his entire collector's place, and they like flee with the orb and the infinity stone, and it's like, what? Like, the scene goes by like whoosh, which again ties into the pacing issues. I just thought that was kind of dumb, because it's like, that was an interesting character. I wanted to see more of that character. I mean, a little unsettling, like, not sure how I felt about him, but although they do, in the end credits scene, the scene after the credits, they show him, he's still alive, and the dog that I mentioned earlier, the like space astronaut dog is like licking him, and he's like, ugh, and he drinks this. And then they have a really weird cameo from Howard the Duck, which, if you don't know who that is, go watch the Nostalgia Critic review of the movie Howard the Duck. And if you've already seen that review, you'll know what I'm talking about. Basically, it's like this anthropomorphic talking duck who like smokes and drinks. And in the Howard the Duck movie, he's got a really like he's really stupid looking, like you can't take him seriously. But in this movie, he actually had a really cool design in the finale. I thought kind of like he was kind of ugly, but like not in a it's hard to look at him way, like the King of the Hill animation to make. Because I've never actually watched King of the Hill, and that's part of why. Because the animation just to me is just ugly. But God dang, I lost my train of thought again. Frick. And it's a weird cameo because he's like talking to the dude. I don't remember what he says because I was too distracted by the fact that he was in the movie. I kind of knew he was going to be there because I had seen some reviews of the movie, but it was still cool. I wonder if they're going to make a movie out of him. I feel like at this point Marvel is so successful that they could reboot, because the original Howard the Duck movie was terrible, but I feel like Marvel as a company is so successful in the realm of comic book movies now that they could reboot Howard the Duck, give him his own movie, and still make great sales. Like if Guardians of the Galaxy, who are virtually unknown superheroes outside of comic book fans, like I didn't know who they were, sold better than Man of Steel, which starred Superman, and then at this point Marvel can make a movie out of anything. Their name has become like, and there aren't many movie studios that have done this. Their name has become like synonymous with quality. Like you hear Marvel, you see that a movie is a Marvel movie, and you go, "Ooh, this should be good." Like that. It's the only other movie company that I can really think of that has done that is Pixar. Like you hear about a Pixar movie and you go, "Oh, this should be good." Although even Pixar starting to lose that a little bit with movies like Cars 2 and Brave, and other people might say Monsters University, but I liked Monsters University. I don't know why people hate on that one, but is there anything else I wanted to say? I don't know. Give me a second. I'll cut back in a minute. I gotta think if there's anything else I want to say. I remember what I needed to talk about. To be completely honest, I had to go to the bathroom, and that's why I couldn't think of, like, I couldn't get my train of thought, but I realized while I was in the bathroom that I kind of got sidetracked when I was talking about how they ended up in prison. Basically, Gamora tries to get the orb from Star-Lord, and in the process, they start fighting, and in the process, Rocket Raccoon and Groot are also trying to capture Star-Lord and turn him in for bounty money. So, as a result, they all end up in prison because they caused this big ruckus in the middle of the crowded city. And it was a funny scene. It was definitely a funny scene. Also, Star-Lord's dad. In the beginning of the movie, his mom is dying of cancer, and she mentions that his dad is gone. His dad basically left them, and you think it's just some human dead, but no, actually his dad is not human. It's revealed in the end of the movie that basically they managed to get the Infinity Stone from Ronan, who captures it like partway through the movie, through this really kind of stupid scene where like Star-Lord starts dancing to this music and Ronan is just like confused. He's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he could just kill them all, but he's like all distracted. He's like, "I'm distracting you, dummy." And then he like turns and like gets his hammer that has the stone inside of it gets shot, and then Star-Lord grabs the stone, and the stone should kill him, but it doesn't. And he kills Ronan. And you discover the reason that Stone didn't kill him is he's not entirely human, or Terran, as they call it, up there in the galaxy. His mother was a Terran, but his father was something we've never seen before. A quote from the Nova police leader, who who apparently was played by Glenn Close. I didn't even notice because the makeup was so extensive. She kind of looked like a Hunger Game, like you know how in the Hunger Games movie they have those people that like live at the Capitol that like have ridiculous poofy hair and ridiculous makeup. She looked like one of them. Like she had this ridiculous like poofy white hair and like makeup on. She looked weird. In fact, the whole city kind of reminded me of the Capitol from Hunger Games, but obviously less corrupt. But yeah, anyway, and they mentioned it before, like the basically the reason that the space outlaw guys agree to work with Star Lord is so he'll give them the orb. It's great because he gives them the orb at the end of the movie, but you know if you've seen an action movie before, you know that it's not really the orb, that he switched it out, and instead of just cutting straight to the dude flying away and opening it to see what's actually inside, which they do, which is a funny joke that I'm gonna mention in a minute. It's like, they do that like right at the end of the movie, like the very end. They cut to him opening it, and then they cut to the credits, which was great. Instead, they have him say, I wonder how long before he realizes that I switched it out," and he holds up this other orb, and it was like, how he, what I do wonder though is how he somehow like suddenly had another orb that looked exactly like the actual one that had the Infinity Stone in it. Like that didn't make sense, but you know, it's nitpicking. That's what CinemaSins is for. But they fly away, and he has a little conversation with his henchman, like the leader of the bandits, and they casually mentioned that maybe we should have delivered him to his dad, like, cause like he asked him to, and they just casually met, and then one of them goes, "His dad was a jackass," and as they're flying away, and only the audience hears it, and it's weird. It's a weird moment because they kind of just brush aside that fact, like oh, it's nothing, it's just normal, but when in reality it's a massive bombshell of information. Like, what? His dad's a space person? Which they then further explain that in another scene. Oh, but even then, they don't really explain who he is, which I'm assuming that's something they're going to do in the sequel. Like, he's going to meet his father in the sequel. I'm assuming, because but it was cool, but it was weird how the initial bombshell that his dad is not human was sort of like just treated like casual dialogue and given no weight at all. Ironic, but I believe that like everything else in this movie, it was intentional. The movie is intentionally cheesy and intentionally serious when he wants to be. The only thing in the movie, which I mentioned this earlier in the movie, the only thing in the movie that's not, and that I can't tell if it's trying to be serious or cheesy or silly or what its tone is trying to give off, is Ronan. I can't tell what they were trying to give him off as. Serious, silly, cheesy, I don't know. But everything else has a clear tone in mind and of what they want the audience to be thinking about it, which I like. That's a good thing for a movie to have. But I think that's about it. Basically, great movie. In my opinion, the best Marvel movie. The story's a bit cliche, but like it's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's a fun romp. It's a fun space adventure. Just and it's no. I think that's where Marvel is. That's why Marvel is winning over DC. DC is trying to make their movies all serious and gritty. Like that's why Man of Steel has a divided audience. Green Lantern was a flop. Pretty much nothing. I can't think of anything by DC since Dark Knight movies that has been like a sure like a definitive success. As like basically all the Marvel movies have been lately. And the reason that Guardians of the Galaxy, the reason that their movies can fall into that is they're more fun. They take a more fun, family-friendly approach, which brings in more casual people who aren't fans of comic books. Whereas DC, ever since Dark Knight, they've been trying to make all their superhero movies serious because if it worked with Dark Knight, it'll work for everything else we do. When in reality, that, I don't know. I feel like superheroes, I mean, there's a place and a time for dark superhero movies, but when that's all you're putting out, it kind of becomes cliche. And that's where Marvel has the edge over DC. Just fun, funny, and Guardians of the Galaxy is basically like the pinnacle of what Marvel is. Just fun, family-friendly, action-adventure, superhero romp, where the actual plot is not as important as the interactions between the characters and the action and in this movie's case, the comedy. So yeah, that's it. I never know how to end these things. Arrivederci!